Welcome to Dip Your Toes into Carmel, the podcast of the St. Therese Province of Discalced Carmelite Friars. Walk with us today as we reflect on the fatherhood of St. Joseph, an article written by Father Jorge Cabrera.
It doesn't take much reflection to see why the Church proclaimed the year from December 8th, 2020 to December 28th, 2021 as the year of St. Joseph. The Church is a sign of contradiction in the world. Serving as God's sacrament of salvation to humanity brings about her inevitable struggle against the false values of the world. Though this battle has been happening from the beginning, it's now more fierce than ever. One manifestation of this is the profound crisis surrounding the true meaning of masculinity and fatherhood, and has direct repercussions on the family, the Church's most basic unit. In the minds of many, masculinity and fatherhood have become synonyms of oppression, control, or neglect. The distorted way in which some men have exercised these roles has led others to diminish or even deny the importance and necessity of the legitimate role of men in the family and in society. In 1870, the role God gave Joseph as head and protector of the Holy Family led to this remarkable saint being declared the guardian of the universal Church and of families. A fairly common but mistaken notion about St. Joseph's fatherhood is that because he was the adoptive father of Jesus, he wasn't a real father. Culturally, we have come to assume that fatherhood that is not biological is not genuine. To this, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI responds,
Joseph is not the biological father of Jesus, whose father is God alone, and yet he lives his fatherhood fully and completely. To be a father means above all to be at the service of life and growth.
Or, what defines true fatherhood is not generation according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Paternity contributes to the life and growth of others in spiritual ways. Though it may include the physical aspect, it also goes beyond it. Hence, as Father Carter Griffin clearly states,
fatherhood must be liberated from a materialistic, biologistic oversimplification and once again upheld as the highest fulfillment of masculinity, ordered both to the procreation of life and to its fruition, both naturally and supernaturally.
The essence and source of all fatherhood is the fatherhood of God. We can even say that there is but one fatherhood, that of God the Father. Because man was created in his image, he has been granted a participation in this one divine paternity. Yet the one supreme fatherhood of God is not biological, but spiritual. For this reason, St. Joseph's fatherhood is not an apparent or merely substitute fatherhood, but one that fully shares an authentic human fatherhood and its mission in the family. After all, as St. John Paul II states,
the growth of Jesus in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man took place within the Holy Family under the eyes of Joseph, who had the important task of raising Jesus, feeding, clothing, and educating him in the law and in trade, in keeping with the duties of a father.
God chose St. Joseph to serve the person and mission of Jesus specifically by inserting the exercise of his fatherhood into the mystery of the Incarnation. Thus, by fulfilling his paternal role over Jesus, the Word made flesh, Joseph cooperates like no other man with God's plan of redemption. In this sense, by being a father, Joseph is truly a minister of salvation. Joseph lived out this call to fatherhood as a true, sacrificial, and self-giving act of love and service. In the words of St. Paul VI, Joseph lived out his paternity
by making his life a sacrificial service to the mystery of the Incarnation and its redemptive purpose. He employed his legal authority over the Holy Family to devote himself completely to them in his life and work. He turned his human vocation to domestic love into a superhuman oblation of himself, his heart, and all his abilities, a love placed at the service of the Messiah who was growing to maturity in his home.
Therefore, in this just man, we see how true masculinity makes a sincere gift of self, putting all its gifts, such as authority, strength, and power, at the service of God and others. We can then say, without hesitation, that St. Joseph was a true and genuine father. Some even argue that since the fruit of Joseph's fatherhood is not just an adopted or natural child, nor even a child in the order of grace, but the very source of grace and life himself, Joseph's may be the greatest instance of human fatherhood in history. This may raise the question of whether Jesus, being God, really needed a human father other than to fulfill the law. The simple answer is yes. Christ is not only divine, but also human, which implies he had human physical needs, such as eating and sleeping, as well as psychological needs, such as the love, guidance, and care of a human father. This is why, as Father Donald Calloway explains,
God the Father entrusts his Son to the watchful, loving care of a human father. Through the fatherhood of Saint Joseph, Jesus grew into the fullness of his manhood. When the Son of God humbled himself and took on human nature, he placed himself under the laws of human growth and development. In order to grow into the fullness of his manhood, Jesus required a mother, a father, and time. All children require this.
God calls men in the Church to use their masculinity with all its gifts to offer support, protection, love, and guidance to younger generations, especially in the most crucial undertaking of knowing, loving, and serving God. Today, a significant part of the crisis in the Church and in society as a whole is precisely a crisis of genuine fatherhood. The Church and society are in great need of men who are true fathers, who are positive role models of courage, compassion, and love of God. Through the intercession and example of Saint Joseph, God is lighting the way and offering men the graces needed to respond to this call. Like the Holy Patriarch, men are to live out their paternity as a gift of self for the good of the Church and the glory of God.
Reflect further on Saint Joseph, masculinity, and spiritual fatherhood with the resources found in our show notes. Thank you for listening to Dip Your Toes into Carmel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube to keep up with all of the friar's activities and reflections. The full article link may be found in our show notes. Until next time.